Support for This News is So Gay comes from the LGBTQ Opportunity Fund of the Cleveland Foundation, leveraging philanthropy to empower LGBTQ communities. Welcome to This News is So Gay. I'm your host, Ken Schneck, editor of The Buckeye Flame, Ohio's LGBTQ newsroom. Thanks so much for joining us. Here's what we've got coming up on this week's brand new episode. That intersection of LGBTQ identity and public health continues to be loaded with stories. We talk about it a lot. What are some of the latest stories that you need to know? That word family is a loaded word for our LGBTQ community. What has our roundtable been covering with this idea of family? And of course, queer joy. Where is our roundtable finding queer joy in the news right now? Joining us this week to answer those questions and so many more, reporter covering religion, culture, and community development in the Central Valley for Fresno Land and a core member for Report for America, Gisselle Medina. Gisselle, welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, as always, Ken, for having me.
A haircut, and people can't see it because it's audio. We love it. And joining us for the first time, health reporter for Signal Cleveland, covering a broad array of factors influencing Clevelanders' health, from the traditional healthcare systems to issues like housing and the environment. Celia Hack. Celia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We are so excited to have you. Our LGBTQ Reporters Roundtable is now assembled, so let's dive in. So let's start where we've been starting every single week with our unnamed segment. I think at this point, I'm just not going to name it, to see how LGBTQ journalists are doing. Gisselle, how are you holding up?
I'm holding up. I'm holding up well. I feel like the past couple of weeks have been kind of overwhelming with stories and some
Yeah.
stuff from my personal life, but I had a good weekend. This past weekend, I did basically nothing. I'm really into doing like newspaper puzzle stuff,
Yeah.
and it's been great. It's been really helping like my mental health and like taking a step away from like actual reading the news, and a very fun format of doing these games and puzzles.
Now, do you head outside in the 105-degree weather, or that's just not your thing?
I try to avoid being outside in general, like,
Okay.
in
Yeah.
any weather, because I just don't like the sun. Love being indoors and being inside. So especially when it's hot as hell, definitely will avoid as much as possible.
There it is. There it is. Celia Hack, how are you doing?
I'm good. I actually feel like I might have the opposite response to Giselle. But to be fair, the heat here is not 105 degrees. It's a nice 80 or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I am completely basking in it and soaking up every moment of the warmth that I can in this cold, cold state. So I have to say I'm loving the sun. I'm loving the weather. So yeah, I'm doing well.
Have you found, relatively new to Cleveland, Celia, have you found a favorite outdoor Cleveland spot?
I honestly don't know if I have one as opposed to others. I really I love Edgewater. Huntington Beach is gorgeous. Just any I'm originally from Kansas. That's where I moved from. There was no bodies of water at all. So, well, no beautiful bodies of water that I felt safe to swim in. So these are nice. And I'm at a community garden. I love spending time outside there.
Love
So
it.
yeah, lots of good places here in the summertime to be outside.
You cannot convince me that what people call a lake is not an ocean there at Edgewater Park, but I know that I have some learning to do. So we'll work on that. Let's dive into the week's news. I want to start by talking about some public health related stories. And Celia, I want to start with you. A big story out of Cleveland that has implications far outside of Northeast Ohio. The Cleveland Clinic, the world renowned Cleveland Clinic, settled with the Department of Justice to spend $2 million on what is called detransition care. And also, they agreed to not offer gender affirming care for minors for 2 decades. What should folks know? What should our listeners know about the context for that settlement?
Basically, the Trump administration has been pretty transparent about its opposition to gender affirming care for minors and in general. So last July, like right after they got into office, they announced their Department of Justice started coming after subpoenaing doctors and clinics who do perform those gender affirming medical procedures on children. Some of those subpoenas kind of got caught up in the courts, but There are a few hospitals that actually settled with the Trump administration as they were pursuing these kind of investigations into gender affirming medical care at hospitals. So the first one was Texas Children's Hospital in May of this year. They settled with the administration in the state of Texas after being accused of illegal gender transition interventions, including using false diagnosis codes. So that settlement basically required the hospital to pay $10 million dollars and fund a detransition clinic. The Cleveland Clinic here in Cleveland kind of followed up. They were the second hospital to come to a settlement with the Trump administration on these types of claims. With Cleveland Clinic, the DOJ accused the hospital of basically knowingly submitting claims to Ohio Medicaid that had diagnosis codes that obscured the true reasons that patients were treated, which were, they alleged, for gender dysphoria. The clinic denied those allegations, but they still decided to settle. They paid a $308,000 fine and committed $2 million to detransition care. They'll still bill insurance for that care, but under the settlement, they're supposed to provide detransition care to patients regardless of their ability to pay. That decision has led to a bunch of different reactions across the landscape. The hospital has basically said there's not a lot of change really happening because they already provided this care. Republicans and conservatives really cheered it on, this settlement, and trans rights groups were quite upset and felt that this kind of lended credibility to a pretty politically charged effort to roll back transgender rights and transgender healthcare across the country.
I was going to say, and you just answered it, what do we think this means for other hospitals? I think the larger question is this isn't just an isolated Cleveland story.
Yeah, I think it's like even before these settlements started dropping, it was pretty clear that hospitals across the country were getting very nervous about gender affirming care for minors. There was a story from NPR a few weeks ago about how even hospitals in blue states are dropping transgender care for youth because, in states like Ohio, there are already laws that ban doctors and hospitals from providing certain gender affirming medical procedures to youth, but in states like Massachusetts there's not, but hospitals are still so nervous about the Medicare and Medicaid dollars that the federal government hands out and missing out on that. So there was at least one hospital that in Massachusetts that NPR reported stopped providing certain gender affirming care.
Yeah, we're going to have so many more stories on that. Pivoting over to California, Giselle, we know every piece of research out there that LGBTQ plus individuals disproportionately experience homelessness. And you and some colleagues set out to answer the question of whether homelessness was on the decline in Fresno, which when I read the question, I thought, well, that should be easy to answer. And it turns out maybe not so much.
Clear. So the story focuses on the point in time count in the Fresno Madera region, and it's a federally mandated census that estimates people experiencing homelessness on a single night. And so it helps service providers identify trends, and the data is used to help get grants and things like that. But I guess they changed the way that they do the pit count this year. They usually would just visually count people without actually directly interacting with them, and now they're doing that, but also collecting information on them, voluntary, of course. And so that's the difference, even though that's kind of caused some big conversations among housing advocates here about what exactly the differences are. But during a presser, the Fresno mayor was like, yeah, because of this change in methodology, you can't really compare this number to previous numbers and to previous years. And so this year, the number of people experiencing homelessness went down according to their counts, which technically matches the current California trends. But again, like I said, housing advocates are very skeptical about that as well. But pivoting to queer people, and I think I've mentioned this a bit on previous episodes here, but Fresno's EOC, which is the Economics Opportunity Commission, they've been around for decades, but they specifically had a queer center called the Center. And it was a place where specifically like queer youth were able to access housing sanctuary and support resources through these specific grants. And so there was a dedicated place for queer youth to be able to get these resources. And now that the center has been gone now for quite a bit, there's not a dedicated place anymore. And so Fresno is, as always, has been seeing a lot of queer refugees, a lot of people experiencing homelessness here. So I feel like a lot of advocates are one like trying to band together and create events such as like the Queer Housing Summit here, where like it's a day full of like just panelists just talking about like, okay, as a queer person, here's how you can navigate just housing in general here in Fresno, and that's been helping. But yeah, again, there's not a dedicated place like we used to have, and that's definitely been impacting people here.
Yeah, I read that piece, and in particular, the headline. You know, I'm a fan of headlines sometimes, and thought, yeah, that definitely got people talking. So I was very gratified to read
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Well, let's talk about families. And we know that this word families, that's a loaded word for our community, both biological and chosen families. And we're going to stick with you here, Giselle. You jumped headfirst into this topic of family, and you just published this piece within the past few weeks on LGBTQ plus families in your neck of the woods who are pushing back on the political definitions of the word family. Tell us what you found in that reporting.
Yeah, so it's not surprising that Fresno County's Board of Supervisors passed quote unquote traditional nuclear family month. And they purposely did it during Pride Month, where the original resolution used a lot of hateful language against queer communities before finally releasing the final resolution that didn't have that language anymore. But many community members just was against the resolution. They came out during public comment. They were all on social media. They were also like specifically gathering and doing events to celebrate queer families. And I like looking at this just felt very embarrassed to be living here as a queer and trans person, especially because queer visibility is very much present here. And I also just was noticing that the news got picked up nationally. And it really only described what the resolution was, like the language of it. And I really just wanted to do a story just celebrating queer families, and really also just trying to understand how is the city of Fresno, like, is the city of Fresno going to do anything about this? Just because we do have a dedicated LGBTQ plus liaison. What does the resolution even mean? Like, does this mean moving forward that there's going to be events for tradition, quote unquote, like traditional families? Is this going to impact like LGBTQ plus resources and services? Is this going to create just barriers for queer people in the county level moving forward? And so I know that those were conversations that people were having as well. And so the story just focuses on all of that. And I really just wanted to highlight just queer visibility and queer families and how Pride is forever, and people are still here and still going to celebrate themselves.
The piece is so flippin' good, Giselle, and I've read a ton of your stuff. It's been look,
Oh my
I've
God.
been saying it more and more. The pleasure of doing this podcast, and I think this is episode 53 or 54, I actually don't remember, but it's 53 or 54, is just that I get to know different people's work, and so this being your maybe 4th or 5th time on the podcast, I've read a bunch of your stories. This is my favorite thing you've written so far, and I've complimented
Wow.
you on prior stories, so this isn't just, like, just about this.
That
So,
means the world. Thank you, Ken. So sweet.
well, folks should check it out. Pride is Forever. Meet the Fresno County families that don't need politicians to define family. And it's certainly a conversation we're having here in Ohio as well. We have a bill called to designate Natural Families Month, and it's the month between Mother's Day and Father's Day. And it is, respectfully, the most ridiculous piece of legislation. It's one that I talk about all the time because it just shows the absurdity of some of these conversations, but it's also exactly what you said. All right, so say they pass this, which Ohio has not yet passed it. They've had a couple hearings, in the Ohio State House. What does it mean? Are there gonna be events? Like, what does this actually mean? So, yeah, yay, Ohio. Kansas would never do such a thing, Celia, right? Never. Well, Celia, another aspect of families that we do not discuss nearly enough. We really need to do just a whole episode solely on the experience of LGBTQ plus elders. But for right this second, let's talk about the fact that Many LGBTQ plus elders are at risk for exploitation because they might not be able to access adequate care. And you wrote about a report that was released earlier this year that shed some light on these issues of elders more generally. What did that report have to teach us?
Yeah, this was interesting as a health reporter to see some of the statistics coming out of this here in Cuyahoga County in Ohio. Basically, what they found is that over the past, I think it's 5 years, the reports coming into county hotlines of neglect, exploitation, and abuse of older adults has risen by about 30%. I actually didn't realize before I wrote this story that we even had a government group that responds to these type of concerns for adults. There's a similarity between Child Protective Services and Adult Protective Services. So the report found that, yeah, as our population is aging, these number of complaints and concerns is going up a lot as well. A lot of it is self neglect, actually. People who can't take care of themselves, they might not be able to take their medication or feed themselves, but there's also exploitation, people taking advantage of an older person's money or resources. And this team, this Adult Protective Services team, when they get a complaint or a call, will go out and respond and check on the person, evaluate the situation, offer resources if there needs to be, see what they can do. And there's some more extreme interventions too, guardianships, court filings, that kind of thing, if that's a necessity. I think overall it's important. The population is aging here, and the resources dedicated to helping folks in these situations are slim. And then, as you said, Ken, there has been some research kind of nationally about how LGBT older adults experience these issues. There was a report or like a piece of research from 2020 looking at how lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender adults, older adults, experience elder abuse and neglect. And there is concern that that community faces higher rates of elder abuse and neglect, and different experiences too, depending on their family situation.
So much to discuss there. Well, a couple more stories. In a phrase that I have never used on This News is So Gay, we have a couple of culinary stories for you, food related. Giselle, I cannot begin to tell you how much this piece inspired a conversation in the Buckeye Flame newsroom. But start off by telling us what on earth is faith based coffee?
I'm happy you said that because, yeah, this story definitely sparked a lot of conversations in the community about, like, just in general, like, does religion belong in coffee? Like, point blank. And so this was a story that my editor really wanted me to do because we've both just been noticing that there's a lot of cafes here in Fresno and Clovis area that are just religious based.
Yeah.
And so Fresno's an ecosystem for religious institutions and leaders. It definitely shapes civic life here, and it's very, very like all the time. It's everywhere. A lot of religious organizations and leaders just come together to try to tackle the city's most pressing issues. And so I noticed that there was just a lot of specifically Christian coffee shops here, and I wanted to understand just how they operated. Like, were they for nonprofits? Are cafe workers volunteers? Do revenues go back to the church, just things like that. And so I spoke to 3 different coffee shops, and they all operate, and the way I describe it was like different business models. And I found that like some, like for one, some staff were paid, but not all. 2, one shop's revenue was like for mission work, and that was it. Didn't go back to the employees slash volunteers. And then the other one, all employees were paid with revenue, not from like the coffee shop, but from the church instead. And instead, that revenue went to something else. And so it was just interesting the way that these coffee shops run, and especially just diving in more about the culture and like how like beyond coffee, these spaces just function as kind of just places where people can gather, like not just for caffeine, but like for Bible studies and like devotional time and mentorship and just like being in community. And so it was very interesting couple days just trying to understand that.
Yeah. I suspect there was an immersion there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have that here, and I know it's all over the place, but even my local coffee shop that I am in daily, that my partner is in daily, there is this faith-based aspect that people don't actually talk about, which I think would be very fascinating if we did have that conversation about the faith underpinnings of my local coffee shop here in Cleveland, but that's a whole different conversation. Celia, I have to tell you, I struggle to sometimes understand various different governmental policies. And this is one of those that I actually understand better now because of your reporting. You have been doing heroic work covering all things related to SNAP benefits, which again disproportionately affects the LGBTQ plus community as we experience, according to some research, higher rates of food insecurity. Can you talk a little bit about how you have approached the reporting on SNAP benefits and what it means to you?
I would say over the past couple of months, I've been doing a lot of like kind of more policy reporting after it's called HR1 or the One Big Beautiful Bill, whichever you choose, passed last summer. There was a lot of, by Republicans and President Trump signed it as well. There was a lot of kind of fear around what that would mean for SNAP benefits and Medicaid as well. And so I've been trying to follow like what it actually means here in Cuyahoga County. That bill made cuts to the SNAP program, which are also like historically have been known as food stamps. Essentially, they help people pay for groceries at the grocery store. And the changes to the program added work requirements for a new set of people. So people would have to prove that they work or volunteer a certain number of hours to get the SNAP benefits. And they also cut off the benefits for certain groups of people who don't have U.S. citizenship. As a result of that, over the past 6 months or so, the number of people here in Cuyahoga County who have SNAP benefits has dropped pretty drastically. And we still haven't seen the full impact of work requirements kind of come into play. So I've been looking at the policy side, and I think I'm actually kind of excited right now because I'm doing some reporting that I'm kind of trying to shift to more of the people side of things and how this is playing out on the ground for Cleveland and Cuyahoga County residents who have to buy their groceries, have to go to the store every week, every month, however often they go. And I'm kind of at a phase where I'm really trying to talk to people about how these changes impact what they're putting on their plate. And it's not just SNAP benefits either, as I'm sure you both know. Grocery prices are going crazy right now.
Oh, yeah.
And that honestly, even more than SNAP, is what I hear is making people change what they're eating, which is a huge part of health. I mean, if you go to the doctor, that's going to be one of the things they ask you and want to know is how your diet is. So I'll just plug, like, if you're a Clevelander or Cuyahoga County resident who's interested in talking more about food and how maybe your diet has changed since grocery prices have changed, since SNAP has changed, I would love to hear from you.
I love that. More reporting to come. But for right this second, you all are listening to This News is So Gay. I'm your host, Ken Schneck, from the Buckeye Flame, Ohio's LGBTQ plus newsroom. Joining me this week, Gisselle Medina from Fresno Land and Celia Hack from Signal, Cleveland. By the by, if you all are not subscribed to This News is So Gay, what on earth are you waiting for? Subscribe to This News is So Gay right this very second on your favorite podcasting app so that new episodes automatically make their way to you. Well, it is time, folks. It is time for Glitter Bomb. This is where our roundtable shares stories of queer joy that they see out there covered in the news. So let's set off this week's Glitter Bomb. Gisselle, let's start with you. Give us a story of queer joy that you particularly love out there.
I'm really excited about reading the new Heartstopper graphic novel that
Yeah.
came out. It's the last one of the series. Like, as a journalist, it's very hard for me to one, like, not read news all the time. When I don't read news, like, I just want to read queer joy. Like, that's usually like young adult queer joy is usually where I go towards. And I picked up Heartstopper late to the game, but when I did pick it up, I was like, "Oh, this is so great," especially in graphic novel form. And I'm just very excited about this novel that I've yet to get my hands on, but it's out now, so I'm very excited.
That is queer joy incarnate. We love
Cool.
that. Celia Hack, any queer joy that you want to shout out?
I'm gonna take Giselle's lead because I was poking around for news stories, and well, my first I would say is I've been watching a lot of the World Cup, and it brought
Yes.
back memories of the 2019 Women's World Cup. I don't know if any of you are soccer fans, but that was just such a moment of queer joy for lesbians around the world and others. So I have been reflecting a lot on how fun that was, and I would love someday to see that same energy in the U.S. men's team, in the Men's World Cup, and maybe someday we'll get that. The other one was very more personal. I went to see the North Coast Men's Choir in June. That's the gay men's choir here in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, and they did some wonderful, wonderful singing. I loved Poker Face, and they did Mulan's I'll Make a Man Out of You. Great dancing, great costumes. You have to see it.
Oh, wow. They will love that plug. I have seen them many times. I love it. And finally, the Emmy nominations are out with indeed a ton of LGBTQ plus performers being nominated. Heated Rivalry was not nominated as it is technically a Canadian show and thus not eligible. But for this week's quick queer culture question, I want from you two an LGBTQ plus character or performance by an out actor that you feel deserves an Emmy from any show ever. It might be from Heartstopper. We'll find out. Gisselle, give us one. Just give us one.
I love Dan Levy's performance in Schitt's Creek. I will
Done.
always talk about him. I was very late to watching Schitt's Creek. Actually, my sister was the one who was like, I love this show. I think you'd love it." And not just for the queer stuff, but just in general. And I watched that, and just the representation on the show was phenomenal from Dan. And I just, yeah, every time I think about like romance in a sitcom, it's like rarely like accurate and queer. Like I think of him, and so I don't know if he's won. I assume he has for this
He
role,
has.
but yeah,
I love it.
yeah, yeah.
And deservedly so. Do you know how many times I've turned to my partner and said, can you please just learn the acoustic version of Tina Turner's Simply the Best? I mean, it's
It's so good.
so good.
It's so
I
beautiful.
listen to it all the time. Celia Hack, what are you watching that you think deserves an Emmy on the queer spectrum there?
I said Andrew Rannells as Elijah in Girls. Can't be beat. I actually looked it up. He did not win an
He
Emmy
did
for that,
not.
which is criminal. And I don't know if you take Reality, but Parvati Shallow in Traitors is a queer icon and needs to be recognized as such.
Are you a reality TV watcher, Celia Hack?
I am. I held myself
Ooh.
back from putting Housewives, but because they are queer only in spirit. So
I cannot begin to tell you the conversations that are going to take place on our drive home because I am also a Bravo-holic. Well, we certainly want to hear what you both are working on. So tell us, Gisselle, what's coming up for you?
I don't think I can technically talk about it.
This is my favorite answer, by the way, that journalists give every single week.
Let's just say it's related to housing and homelessness. And I'm not, I'm only a religion and immigration and culture reporter. So this is, I'm now kind of branching out. But yeah, let's just say holding a lot of people in the city accountable for some shit that they're doing.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Celia Hack, what's coming up for you?
I am gonna plug the food and food access work again. I'm in the early stages of trying to kind of get like a what I eat in a day trend going. I don't know if you get
Yeah.
those on TikTok or social media. They're usually kind of influencer based, but I'm a little more interested in doing those more like kind of from like a why perspective, like what grocery stores are near you, what's your budget, oh gosh, there's so many things that go into what we eat. So I'm gonna plug that again because I'd love to. I know it sounds kind of weird, like because it seems so individual what we eat, but there's so many bigger systems around us that kind of go into why we eat what we eat. And I'd love to talk with people about it. So yeah, I'm at Signal Cleveland.
Love it. Amazing. I'm so bummed that that is all the time that we have for this week's episode. You're both so wonderful. Gisselle Medina, what a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you, as always, Ken, for having me. It's such a highlight of my day when I'm here
Ah,
talking to you and others.
Celia Hack, a triumphant debut here on This News is So Gay. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you. So nice to meet you, Gisselle. I'm so grateful I got to do this.
Ah, so wonderful. I'm Ken Schneck, editor of the Buckeye Flame. And if you liked this episode of This News is So Gay, please share it with a friend. Subscribe so that you do not miss out on our next episode. Send an email on over to editor@thebuckeyeflame.com. That's me, to let us know your thoughts, and rate and review us on your favorite podcasting app. This News is So Gay is a product of the Buckeye Flame, a nonprofit newsroom. Become a recurring donor today, we call them Fireflies, for as little as $12.50 a month, which truly enables programming like This News is So Gay from a scrappy queer nonprofit newsroom like the Buckeye Flame. In the meantime, read LGBTQ plus news, share the stories written by LGBTQ plus reporters, and support the work of LGBTQ plus newsrooms. Until next week, friends.